You wake up with big goals in your mind. You want to start that project, change your life, build something meaningful, become stronger, richer, smarter. But instead of moving forward, you start thinking. You think about the perfect plan. You think about what could go wrong. You think about whether you're ready or not. Minutes turn into hours. Days turn into weeks. And suddenly you realize something painful. You've been thinking about your life more than you've been living it. Overthinking is one of the most silent dream killers in the world. Not because people are lazy, but because they're stuck inside their own heads. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, I'll start tomorrow. I need to research more first. What if it fails? What will people think? And just like that, another opportunity disappears. The truth is simple but powerful. Clarity does not come from thinking. It comes from action. Most people believe they need confidence before they begin. They believe they need the perfect strategy before taking the first step. But the people who actually change their lives understand something different. They start before they feel ready. Look at every successful person you admire. They didn't have all the answers in the beginning. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They didn't wait until fear disappeared. They simply started moving because action creates clarity. Imagine trying to learn how to swim by reading books about swimming. You could study techniques for months. You could watch thousands of videos. But until you jump into the water, none of that knowledge truly matters. Life works the same way. You don't figure everything out first and then act. You act first, and the path reveals itself. Overthinking tricks your brain into feeling productive. It makes you believe you're working on your goals. But in reality, you're just running mental circles. And the longer you stay in that loop, the harder it becomes to escape. Your mind starts building bigger fears. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough? But here's something most people never realize. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of failure. Failure teaches you something. Failure makes you stronger. Failure gives you experience. But doing nothing, that only creates regret. Years from now, the things that will haunt you the most are not the risks you took, but the chances you were too afraid to take, the business you never started, the idea you never shared, the dream you kept delaying. Overthinking builds invisible cages. You start believing you need perfect timing. You wait for motivation. You wait for confidence. But motivation is unreliable. Some days you feel unstoppable. Other days you feel tired, doubtful, unmotivated. If you depend on motivation, your progress will always be inconsistent. Successful people understand something powerful. Discipline beats motivation every time. Discipline means taking action even when you don't feel like it. Discipline means moving forward even when your mind is full of doubts. Because action breaks the cycle of overthinking. The moment you take a step, something shifts inside you. Your brain stops imagining problems and starts solving real ones. Think about the first day you ever went to the gym. Before you went, your mind probably created dozens of excuses. What if I look stupid? What if people judge me? What if I don't know what I'm doing? But once you walked through the door and started your workout, those fears slowly disappeared. Why? Because action replaced imagination. Most fears only exist in the mind. When you take action, reality usually turns out far less scary than your thoughts predicted. Another reason people overthink is the pressure to be perfect. We live in a world where social media shows us polished success stories, perfect businesses, perfect lifestyles, perfect results. But what you don't see is the messy beginning. Every successful journey starts with confusion, mistakes, and uncertainty. The first video someone uploads might only get 10 views. The first business idea might fail. The first attempt might feel awkward. But those imperfect steps are the price of progress. Perfection is not the starting point. It's the result of repetition. Think about learning how to drive a car. The first time behind the wheel feels uncomfortable. You make mistakes. You stall the engine. You struggle to focus on everything at once. But after enough practice, driving becomes automatic. The same rule applies to success. The more action you take, the more confident you become. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you build through action. Overthinking also comes from trying to control the future. Your mind wants guarantees. It wants certainty. It wants proof that everything will work out. But life doesn't give those guarantees. No one knows exactly how things will unfold. And waiting for certainty is just another form of procrastination. Instead of asking, what if this fails? Start asking a different question. What if this works? What if that idea you've been holding on to actually changes your life? What if that small step today leads to an opportunity you never imagined? What if taking action becomes a moment everything begins to shift? You don't need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. You only need the courage to move. And the truth is, the first step is always the hardest. Your brain will resist it. Your comfort zone will try to keep you where you are. Comfort zones feel safe, but they are also where dreams slowly die. Growth only happens when you step into the unknown, when you try something new, when you risk looking foolish, when you allow yourself to be a beginner, because beginners grow. Perfectionists stay stuck. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone with less talent than you is succeeding simply because they started. They didn't wait for perfect timing. They didn't overanalyze every step. They took action, and each small action built momentum. Momentum is powerful. One small step leads to another. One attempt leads to improvement. One day of effort becomes a week. A week becomes a month. And suddenly you realize you built something real. But it all starts with a decision to stop living inside your thoughts and start living through your actions. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need perfect confidence. You don't need permission. All you need is one step, one small action today. Because the life you want is not waiting on the other side of more thinking. It's waiting on the other side of action. And the moment you choose action over overthinking, everything begins to change. Overthinking convinces you that thinking longer will somehow create the perfect solution. It whispers that if you analyze every angle, predict every outcome, and prepare for every possibility, you'll finally be ready to act. But the truth is, overthinking rarely creates solutions. Most of the time, it creates paralysis. Your brain begins to build scenarios that haven't happened yet. It imagines failure before the first attempt. It imagines judgment before anyone even notices. It imagines obstacles before the journey even begins. And suddenly, something that should have been simple becomes overwhelming. You wanted to start a business, but now you're worried about competition, money, marketing, and failure. You wanted to start working out, but now you're worried about the perfect routine, the perfect diet, the perfect schedule. You wanted to start creating content, but now you're worried about the camera, the lighting, the script, the editing, and what people might say. So instead of starting small, you wait. You wait until everything feels perfect. But here's the reality. Perfect never arrives. The people who make progress are not the ones who know everything. They are the ones who start before they know everything. They take messy action. Messy action means you move forward even when things aren't perfect. Even when you don't have the best equipment, the best strategy, or the best plan. You begin with what you have, where you are, because starting small is still starting. And small actions create momentum. Momentum is what breaks overthinking. Think about pushing a heavy car. At the beginning, it feels impossible to move. Your muscles strain, and the car barely shifts. But once it starts rolling, it becomes easier to keep it moving. Your goals work the same way. The hardest part is always the beginning. Once you start taking action consistently, your brain begins to shift. Instead of focusing on fears, it focuses on progress. Instead of asking, what if this fails? It starts asking, what's the next step? This shift is powerful. Another reason overthinking traps people is because they believe every decision has to be perfect. They treat small decisions as if they will determine the entire future of their lives. But most decisions are not permanent. They are experiments. Starting a new habit is an experiment. Launching a project is an experiment. Trying a new strategy is an experiment. Experiments are not about perfection. They are about learning. When scientists run experiments, they expect mistakes. They expect unexpected results. They expect things to go wrong. Because every mistake brings them closer to understanding what works. You should treat your goals the same way. Instead of demanding perfection from yourself, allow yourself to experiment. Try something. Learn from it. Adjust. Improve. Try again. Progress is simply a series of experiments. But overthinking stops those experiments before they even begin. It convinces you that mistakes are dangerous, that failure is embarrassing, that getting things wrong means you're not capable. But failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has failed many times along the way. The difference is they didn't allow those failures to stop them. They treated failure as feedback. Feedback tells you what works and what doesn't. Feedback helps you improve. Without feedback, you stay stuck in theory. Overthinking lives in theory. Action lives in reality. And reality is where growth happens. Another powerful way to break the cycle of overthinking is to focus on the next step instead of the entire journey. When you think about the whole mountain, it feels intimidating. The climb looks impossible. But when you focus on the next step, the journey becomes manageable. You don't need to solve your entire future today. You only need to take the next step. If you want to start a business, the next step might simply be writing down your idea. If you want to get healthier, the next step might simply be going for a 20-minute walk. If you want to start creating videos, the next step might simply be recording your first clip. Simple actions break mental resistance. Your brain wants to complicate things, but success often comes from doing simple things consistently. Think about this. The people who transform their lives rarely do it through one massive action. They do it through small daily actions repeated over time. One workout today, one video recorded today, one skill practice today, one step forward today. Those small steps compound. But the person who waits for perfect conditions never gets to experience that compound growth. Days pass, weeks pass, months pass, and they are still thinking, still planning, still waiting. Meanwhile, someone else with less experience, less knowledge, and less certainty is already moving forward. Not because they are smarter, not because they are more talented, but because they chose action over analysis. And the truth is, action is a skill. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. The first step may feel uncomfortable. The second step feels slightly easier. The third step builds confidence. Soon, action becomes your habit instead of hesitation. Your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who overthinks everything, and you start seeing yourself as someone who executes, someone who moves, someone who takes control of their life. Because at the end of the day, your dreams don't respond to your thoughts. They respond to your actions. Most people believe overthinking is a sign of intelligence. They think that analyzing everything deeply makes them smarter and more prepared. But in reality, overthinking often becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination. It feels productive because your brain is busy. You're evaluating options, predicting outcomes, imagining possibilities. But while your mind is running in circles, your life remains in the same place. Nothing changes without action. Imagine standing at the edge of a swimming pool for hours, thinking about the water. You test the temperature with your toe. You think about the best way to jump. You imagine how cold it might feel. But until you jump in, you will never actually start swimming. Life rewards movement, not preparation alone. Preparation is important, but preparation without action becomes a trap. The world belongs to people who move. Think about entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, and creators. None of them had perfect certainty when they started. They didn't know exactly how things would unfold. What they had was the courage to begin. And courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is action despite fear. Many people wait until they feel fearless before they act. But fear doesn't disappear before action. Fear fades after action. The moment you start doing something, your brain begins adapting. You gain experience. You learn faster. You become more comfortable. And the thing that once felt intimidating slowly becomes normal. Confidence is built through repetition. This is why action is so powerful. It rewires your identity. At first, you might say, I want to become someone who takes action. But after consistent effort, something shifts. You start saying, I am someone who takes action. That identity change is powerful. Because once your identity changes, your habits follow. Instead of asking yourself whether you feel motivated, you simply do what needs to be done. You build a reputation with yourself. You prove to your own mind that you are reliable. And when you trust yourself, everything changes. One reason people struggle with action is because they aim too big in the beginning. They believe the first step must be huge, impressive, and life-changing. But big actions often create intimidation. Small actions create consistency. If someone wants to start exercising, they imagine intense workouts every day. That thought alone feels exhausting, so they delay starting. But if the goal was simply a 10-minute walk today, it would feel manageable. If someone wants to create videos online, they imagine perfect lighting, professional editing, and millions of views. But the real first step might just be recording a simple video with a phone. The smaller the step, the easier it becomes to start. And starting is everything, because starting creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. When you take action today, you feel slightly more motivated tomorrow. When you take action tomorrow, the habit becomes stronger. Over time, consistency replaces hesitation. Your brain begins to expect movement instead of delay. But if you constantly delay action, the opposite happens. Procrastination becomes your default behavior. The mind always follows the patterns you repeat. If you repeatedly overthink and postpone things, your brain learns that hesitation is normal. But if you repeatedly take action, even when it feels uncomfortable, your brain learns that movement is normal. You train yourself either way. So the real question becomes, what are you training your mind to do? Are you training it to hesitate, or are you training it to execute? Another powerful truth about action is that it reveals opportunities you could never see while standing still. Many opportunities only appear once you start moving. You meet new people. You learn new skills. You discover new directions. Doors begin to open that were invisible before. But those doors only appear for people who are already in motion. A parked car never reaches a new destination. Only a moving car can change direction. And the same rule applies to your life. You don't need the perfect map to start the journey. You simply need to start driving. Along the way, you will make adjustments. You will take wrong turns. You will learn better routes. But every mile you travel brings you closer to somewhere new. Overthinking keeps you parked. Action puts you on the road. And once you're moving, the possibilities expand. Your future begins to change the moment you stop waiting and start doing. Not next week, not next year, but today. Because the life you want will never be built inside your thoughts. It will only be built through your actions. At some point, you have to make a decision. Not another plan, not another list of ideas. A real decision. The decision to stop letting your thoughts control your life. Overthinking can feel powerful because it gives you the illusion of control. Your brain believes that if you think long enough, you can avoid mistakes, avoid embarrassment, avoid failure. But the reality is, life doesn't reward the person who thinks the most. It rewards the person who acts. Every day you wake up with two choices. You can stay inside your comfort zone, thinking about what you want your life to become, or you can step outside that comfort zone and start building it. One path feels safe in the moment, but leads to regret. The other path feels uncomfortable at first, but leads to growth. Growth has never been comfortable. Every meaningful change in life begins with discomfort. The first workout hurts. The first business idea feels uncertain. The first video you create might feel awkward. The first step toward your dream always feels unfamiliar. But that discomfort is not a sign you should stop. It's a sign you are moving in the right direction. Think about every skill you've ever developed. At the beginning, it felt difficult, maybe even frustrating. But through repetition, what once felt hard eventually became easy. Action rewires your brain. Each time you take action, you prove to yourself that you are capable of more than your fears suggested. You break the story your mind has been telling you. The story that says you're not ready. The story that says you might fail. The story that says you should wait a little longer. Those stories lose their power the moment you act. And here's something powerful to remember. Your future is built by your daily decisions, not the big dramatic moments, not the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, but the small choices you make every day. The choice to work when you feel lazy. The choice to start even when you feel uncertain. The choice to try again after a mistake. Those choices compound over time. A single action today may seem small, almost insignificant, but repeated over weeks, months, and years, those small actions create massive change. That's how transformation happens. Not overnight, but day by day. The people you admire didn't suddenly wake up successful one morning. They built their lives through thousands of small actions that most people were too distracted, too afraid, or too comfortable to take. They chose progress over perfection. They chose courage over comfort. They chose action over overthinking. And now it's your turn to make that choice. Because the truth is, no one is coming to push you. No one is going to knock on your door and force you to chase your dreams. Your life is your responsibility. Your future is your responsibility. And that's not a burden, it's power. It means you don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You don't have to wait until fear disappears. You can start right now, right after this moment. Take the idea you've been thinking about and begin working on it. Write the first page. Record the first video. Take the first step toward the goal you've been delaying. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to begin. Because once you begin, something incredible happens. Momentum builds. Confidence grows. Opportunities appear. And the person you once imagined becoming slowly becomes a person you actually are. Years from now, you won't remember the day you spent overthinking, but you will remember the day you finally decided to act, the day you stopped waiting, the day you stopped doubting, the day you took control of your life. So stop overthinking. Start moving. Start building. Start becoming. Because the future you want is not created by the thoughts in your mind. It is created by the actions you take starting today.